Welcome aboard, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
It's all about the Bonannos. I'm going to talk all Bonanno family business, the real Bonannos. Today we have here, I'm very ecstatic and my pleasure to have one of my good friends here from Arizona. Well, I don't think you're originally from Arizona, right?
I was born here in Phoenix, absolutely. Grew up in California, but came back. And I'm
Salvatore Bonanno goes by Tori,
correct.
the grandson of the infamous Joe Bonanno, one of the founding fathers of what we know today to be the Italian-American mafia that still bears his name with law enforcement, at least, right? And the son of Bill Bonanno. Why don't you tell everybody how this whole thing happened, because you got so much history. The lineage of your family is, just to let everybody know the lineage, it's like sitting with one of the founding fathers' grandsons. Take Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, Tommy Lucchese, sitting one of the grandsons.
All contemporaries of my grandfather, for sure.
Exactly.
And, the guys that started what we known as the commission. Yeah, there it is. There they are. Grandpa's in the middle, and he's looking sharp except for his tie is a little spread, so he would not be happy about that because he was an impeccable dresser, and that would be the first thing he would comment on. So
now in the picture, there's Profaci, who we also related to, right?
Right. My mom. That's my mom's uncle. My great uncle. So my dad's side of the family, of course, is the Bonanno side, and my mom's is the Profaci side. So her dad was Salvatore Profaci, and that's actually who I was named after, right? Not being the oldest son, I'm named after the mother's father, and he was also named Salvatore, as well as my dad, and that's just the way it happens in our families, right?
We got some coffee here.
Oh, great.
Some French press. I got a couple coffee mugs. Which one you like?
The New York.
The New York one. Do you want the what?
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's good. Tori, it's really Salvatore.
Salvatore, right.
Salvatore. I can't, even growing up in the neighborhood, there were so many Sals. It was like Fat Sal, Skinny Sal, Sal the Baker, Sal the Butcher, Sally Boy, Sally Dean Do. I mean, all these names, right?
Sammy, Sonny,
Sonny, Santino, Tori, they cut the Salvatore.
Right. When my mom grew up in Brooklyn, like you said, there was all the different Salvatores. But on the next street over, there was a Salvatore that they called Tori Cerrito. And she loved that name. And that's where my nickname Tori comes from, is actually from Tori Cerrito, who lived on the next block. And we grew up in, the Bay Area in California. And Tori Cerrito was a huge, the Cerrito family was the big Chevy dealers. Yeah. So they went on to bigger and better things from Brooklyn.
So, Grandpa, what do you used to call him? Papa?
Grandpa. And they didn't want Papa or Nanu, because they were so, they wanted us assimilated, right? They didn't want us speaking Sicilian, no dialect, nothing. And they didn't want to call him Papa. They wanted him Grandpa. Grandma and Grandpa is what we call
Grandma and Grandpa. And it was English.
Very American. That's what they wanted.
Did you have to speak Italian in the house? Or?
No, they never spoke. They only spoke Sicilian to each other when they didn't want us to understand. They never spoke it to us, and they never wanted us to learn how to speak it because they wanted us to be fully assimilated Americans all the time. So,
now your grandfather, he was fluent in multiple languages.
Many languages, yeah. Farsi, German, French, Latin, Italian, and English was probably his weakest, right? Which is kind of ironic, but yeah, he could speak and understand multiple languages. And then later in life, when he started getting old, his sentences, he would mix in 4 or 5 languages in one sentence, right? Because if he searched for a word and it came to him in German, he would say it in German. So,
now, did you ever tell you how you learned all those languages, or?
Not, specifically, but he was a bookworm. He was always studying. They talk about it now as, continual improvement, 1% better every day. He was all about that, 70, 80 years ago. He was always trying to get educated.
He was
always reading, always, thinking. He was never just chilling, as we call it today. That wasn't what he did. That wasn't his. Yeah.
So growing up with your grandpa,
yeah,
was there anything that stands out at you that you use today? like what he taught you?
Well, a lot of the things, and they go back to the ancient, Greeks, but the main thing that I always attributed to him, it wasn't until later in life that I, found out it was from Greek, from the Greeks, from Aristotle, I think, was you were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So listen twice as much as you talk. That always stuck with me. And then the other one that he used to always say is like, let people think you're a fool. Don't open your mouth and prove it. And they would say these in Sicilian. It would sound a lot more eloquent. But the point is, just let them think it. Don't open your mouth and prove it. So I've always, like in meetings at work and stuff, I've always just tried to, stay quiet. And
that's always in the back of your mind. What
right.
Grandpa
Just thinking,
told you.
just like, don't even say it. If it's, don't even say it if it's not necessary. Right. So
I got to tell you, when I came out to Arizona in 2000, I can't tell you how many people I ran into that used your family name.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to make me think that they were connected to the Bonanno family, your personal family,
right.
not the crime family, but Joe Bonanno from Tucson.
Yeah.
They used your name.
Yeah, I like it when people do it to me. They say, hey, I know the Bonannos down in Tucson. Yeah. Like, oh, you do?
And
really? Tell me about him. Then they'll come up with some name, like, Jeff Bonanno. You know Jeff Bonanno? Like, no, I don't know Jeff Bonanno. And is there one? But there are a lot of Bonannos around, town. They had a lot of real estate holdings. And, back when I first moved to the Valley here in 91, I had this really good credit score when I went to buy a car. I didn't understand why. And then I asked the guy to show me, and they had this guy, Salvatore Bonanno, who had all these real estate holdings, and they were looking at his report on my credit. And I'm like, yeah, do that.
So it worked in a way.
It worked out. That was one of the times it benefited, right? So,
but Tucson, they opened up a business down there, right on Oracle Road, in the Tucson Mall.
Oh yeah,
they opened up a country bar.
Oh, okay.
Called Toby Keith's Cellars Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
So I remember going down to Tucson a lot, and I mean, they would all come in and who's bragging about, I'm friends with Joe Bonanno, and you don't know if they're telling the truth or not, But yeah, they would use your name, your father's name, Bill Bonanno. Yeah. I'm friends with the nephew, and I mean, how many relatives do you have down there?
Not many, but everybody.
There's not many left,
right? There's not, right. Oh, but yeah, we had at one time. Yeah, there were quite a few, but not as many as people think, or say who they know. And, I love to hear when they talk about, they've been to my grandfather's house and they describe this beautiful mansion, that was like, negative edge pools. And like, that's not you don't know my grandfather. I let them, till they realize there's usually somebody else in the crowd who goes, hey, dude, do you know who that is? And then they back off. Whatever.
Yeah, your grandfather was pretty much like a low key.
Very low key. Yeah, he was definitely was not flashy. That would not be a word. I mean, he was a sharp dresser, and when he was out in public, he looked great. But he wasn't. He didn't want to be in the headlines. He didn't want to be noticed out in public, and he wanted to, be left alone and just live a quiet life. And for the most part, he did.
I was always intrigued by, like, to have the vision, because he was a visionary.
Yeah.
Why Tucson, out of all places? You're talking about, like, he hit Tucson in the 1940s, right?
Right.
Why? Did you ever know why he chose Tucson?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, my dad had, and I should know the name of the ailment that he had. It was some sort of leakage of the ear. And the doctors in Brooklyn, take him out to the desert in the sun. It'll dry that right up, right?
So the weather.
So that was one of the things. But then he also, have you been to Sicily?
Have not.
Okay, so Sicily, even though it's an island, when you get inland at all, it is, you couldn't mistake it for Tucson, right? The Catalina Mountains, the Bougainvillea, the cactus. Yeah. It's very similar. And I didn't realize this till I went to Sicily in 2003 and realized, like, once you get inland, this does look a lot like Arizona. The latitudes must be similar, but just the dryness and the rockiness and the cactus and so I think he liked that. That made him feel like, like home. And then, with my dad's, health. And then there was this Russell School for boys, right, that they sent my father to, which was a high-end school. And, I think they, I don't know which cosmetic company, L'Oreal, one of the Maybelline, kids went there, but big names, DuPont kids went to this school out in Arizona. So he came out here in the 40s, for all those reasons, and fell in love with Tucson and stayed there till he died.
Wow, something else. Because the weather down there, it's just as nice as here. I think even nicer. It's more
it's
dry.
nice, right? It's because it cools off at night down there. Where here it doesn't. You're talking about Tucson or
Tucson? Yeah,
I think it's better, right? And
better climate,
right? Because it's higher elevation and it does cool down at night. I mean, it's still the desert and it still gets hotter than you know what. But
I went into a couple good restaurants down there. There was one in particular I remember, been around for years, and they say your grandfather used to go there. I forget the name of it. It was an Italian place.
Scordado's.
There you go.
Yeah, Scordado's was a great restaurant. I remember I met the Fonz there back when Fonz was big time. Henry Winkler. He came in and he was doting all over my grandfather, and he was a lot shorter than I had envisioned the Fonz to be. But Scordado's was a great restaurant. We had a lot of great family meals there.
Yeah, because when I went there, they throw your grandfather's name around. You don't know who's telling it, who's bullshit or what, Joe Bonanno used to eat here, Bill Bonanno, the Bonannos, so the food was good.
It was great, yeah.
It was great. I think you told me a story once your grandfather ran into somebody there.
Oh, yeah, that was Caruso's on 4th Avenue.
Okay, so 2 different places.
Yeah, 2 different places. So, the Caruso's on 4th Avenue.
That's downtown Tucson.
Downtown Tucson, right. And, it's right off downtown. It's called the 4th Avenue. It's a district in Tucson. Back in the 40s when he first came to town, he would meet people and they would say, oh, we have a great Sicilian restaurant in town. We got to go there sometime. And my grandpa was like, yeah, whatever. You have Sicilian food in this, in this dusty desert town. Anyway, he met some people. They went out to this place. They go out to dinner at Caruso's, and they're having dinner, and my grandfather was sitting in a seat that could see into the kitchen. And he looks into the kitchen, and he sees this guy.
This is back in the 70s?
This was in the 40s.
The 40s?
In the 40s. And he looks at this guy, or whenever they first opened, it may have been 50s or, sometime after he moved to Tucson. A few years later, they took him to this restaurant. But the story goes that he recognized this guy from Brooklyn. Didn't say anything, but then he excused himself to use the restroom, and he went and talked to the guy. And I forget, the guy should know his name, and I'll have to look it up. But the story is that he knew him. He knew he was hiding out here. He had, he was on the lam. But my grandfather didn't have a beef with him, and he didn't have a beef with my grandfather. So my grandfather, didn't say anything. And didn't pay. Yeah, there it is, Caruso's. He didn't pay for a meal for the next 50 years at that place. So
especially your grandfather said, I got no beef for you. You got no beef for me. So I'm just going to let it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the way they did it. And they were friends for years and years, and still love that place. So
that's a good spot.
Yeah.
I never realized how many books people in your family authored. I mean, bestsellers.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people piggybacked off your family and wrote books and got New York Times bestsellers. The first one, I think we got about 6 books here.
Yep.
I think there's more out there too, right?
No, this is the full collection that I've brought old copies of. Yeah.
Right. So take us through, what would be the first one that started?
Well, the first one would be Honor Thy Father. This one was written, and this is a beat up copy. I apologize, but this one was written by Gay Talese, and it was a New York Times bestseller. And back when New York Times bestsellers, because that was the only real list at the time, but that was they made a motion picture out of that.
Yeah.
Joe Bologna played my father, and it was my grandfather's story, and when my dad got involved and was forced into service, so to speak. Yeah, it was. That's the one that started it all, and that was in the 70s.
So this is the book that people claim that, and there's no way your grandfather could have known that Giuliani was going to use this.
Oh, no, not this book.
This one.
That's my grandfather's book. That's this book.
Okay, this is the first one with Gay Talese came out with.
Right.
This became a New York Times bestseller and a motion picture too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But this one my grandfather wrote, and it's a description about
he pulled these out of the vault. They were all signed too, right?
Well, I have signed copies somewhere, but they're packed away. And these are books I use for reference, and I just brought it over. But yeah, I do have a pristine hardbound copy with his signature. But that one is just the one I use for reference. But that's the one that Giuliani, because it talks about the formation of the commission. Right. And then Giuliani used the information of that to say, hey, this is organized. Look, here's the organization and here's how it worked. And, they went on to do the RICO. Well, the history of how that, the RICO statutes are the ones that brought everybody down.
Here's the thing I got to say about that. There's no way your grandfather would have known Giuliani was going to use that.
No, and he was very careful to wait until he felt that anybody he named in there was dead and gone, and there would be nobody would have, any recourse or any beef with what he was saying, even though I hear the argument that he broke the code of omerta. But he felt, omerta was, in things of business. But in this, he was setting the story straight. He wanted to really set the story straight about, because he got accused of, wanting to take out Gambino and Lucchese at one point. And he claims that wasn't the case. It was a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. He got played, all these things. But he wanted to put his story out there. And that's why he wrote the book, not, and you're right. There was no way he couldn't have known that Giuliani would have. I hate to give him credit, but it was a brilliant move on Giuliani's part, right?
But do we know for sure Giuliani used the book to indict?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was and there's some clips on YouTube where he's talking about that exact thing, that this shows the structure of the commission and that a commission.
So he referenced the book.
He does reference it, right? So. But yeah, we couldn't have known, but it did happen. Can't deny it, right? It did. That's what happened. Giuliani, used that to do, take down some big names over the years, right?
If anybody had the right to write a book, well, it was your granddad, because he started the family.
You fuck around and playing with the wrong pistol. My shit got a broken safety. Flow sumo, this ain't a game, Uno. Shout out to my Usos, killing bills like Uma. Balls travel from Pluto, big truck soprano, gabagool and prosciutto, kicking ill like judo, judge and jury like Judy. Hoes think they knew me, flows flow through me. Nike gray hoodie, contemplating money. Bees swarming like honey, watch your little homie filter through the phone.